we were watching this movie last night,
Go on.
The Spy Who Dumped Me.
International super spy. You go on.
And it's really cool because usually like movies are made with like love interest. There's like the guy and the girl, and the it sort of starts off with like her boyfriend dying. So then
Oh,
like, oh, it's not gonna
goodness.
be like it's not gonna be a love story, right? But it is a
Really?
love story, but it's like her and her bestie. And
Oh, it's
I know there's one girl on there. I'll let you decide. There's one of the characters on there. Dom is like, "Oh my God, babe, this is you to a T." Every time she's on the screen, I'm like, "This is you." And then there's another character that I thought fit more of like your jam. So I'm just excited for you to watch it because it's hilarious. And it's like they stay the main connection the entire movie. Even though men come in and out, it's like they stay
yeah.
the thing. It's really really funny. It's a
Feels
good
pretty appropriate. I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Um,
So I gotta tell you,
yes.
I had my follow up for my RTT.
You still haven't even told me about the OTT session.
Oh, okay.
Wait,
So let me
back it
back.
up.
No, let me
Back it
go
up
in
all the
reverse.
way.
Let me go in reverse
Okay, okay.
because first and foremost, you told me what your homework was, and I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet and lovely. It's like flowers and rainbows," and I was like really excited. So, and also I like homework because I'm also a nerd, and so I was like, "Okay, yeah, what's my homework?" And I got my homework, and I was like, "What the heck? Sarah got to go buy perfume, and I have to like write hard letters and burn stuff and do." I'm like, "What are you even talking about?" I was giving Alina a really hard time, but I'm like, my baby goddess came out. I was like, that's not fair. That's not, I had to do hard stuff. She didn't have to do hard stuff.
I got to buy perfume, buy something that made me feel luxurious, move my
Uh,
body, like
okay, but can we just talk, like, pause on that second? Bioessence or bioessence or however you say this, the name of the skincare. I should link it in the show notes. I am obsessed with this. Okay, my sister started this thing years ago where every year at Christmas time we do like our favorite things. So me, her, and my sister-in-law. For a while, my mom was participating, but now she doesn't. But every year, like the things that we found that we like just love and we use a bunch, we just I send the same package to my sister and to my sister-in-law. We share our favorite things. My sister introduced me to that company years ago, and I got like trial sizes of a bunch of their stuff, and I'm so obsessed. The rose oil, the moisturizer, like all the stuff you didn't tell me what serum you got.
Okay, so well, first of all, I will say that I love the face wash, the bio,
Oh,
whatever.
it's so good. Yeah.
I put it on last. Dom is like really big into like smells, like really
Yeah.
big
It
into,
smells so clean.
and so I wanted to see how he would. My mind just went other places. It annoys me that my husband is so into the way things smell. He's just
Okay.
like obsessive about it. But I wanted to make sure he liked it, so he smelled it and he was like, I really really like this. So I like that. But I got okay. It's called Alchemy Code. I
From
went. No,
a
it's
different
not,
company?
it's a different company. The company is
Oh,
called
okay.
Alchemy Code.
Okay.
I went down this rabbit hole. So it's like this girl who like started her own, face line of stuff. And it
Okay.
was all focused on like bees and
I
beeswax.
love bees.
And so she
I'm
would,
obsessed with bees,
me
actually.
too. They're just, and when you like learn about bees and how they interact with each other, how they show up to life, like, I mean, they're just extraordinary. But she was
That's not
talking,
even why I like bees. Do you know bees aren't supposed to be able to fly? Aerodynamically, their wings aren't big enough to carry their bodies, but they do it anyway. It's like such a perfect like cosm of the human experience. There's so many things that we shouldn't be able to do, but we do it anyway.
they they make some type of a food and feed it to regular larvae, which turns them into a queen if their queen dies.
Yes, I've seen this too.
They like
Bees are
will
incredible.
shift their DNA of I don't even know. I don't even know.
Yes.
But
Sorry.
yes,
Anyway, sidetrack.
so she was explaining how like most of the stuff that we put on our skin, like water is in the ingredients, and water will actually pull water out of our skin.
Mhm.
But beeswax does the opposite. It will put moisture in and lock it in. So I like get down this rabbit hole of listening to her talk and be like, oh yeah, cool. And then I start going down this rabbit hole of when she first made this, she was going out to these farmer markets and she was selling it to like locals and people loved it. So then it started to grow and then it turned into a company. I think it was called like MIG or something like that. And she started mass producing it, and then that had great reviews and everybody was loving it. And now she's rebranded as the Alchemy Code, which I just love that name.
Love that.
And she has so many like amazing reviews. But what I loved was in the comments were people that had originally met her at these farmer markets that had been using this stuff since back then and met her as a person, and they all were like talking about how sweet she was, and oh my god, I'm so excited for you, I remember you from the farmer markets. Like,
Oh,
you can't get that, from, that magic that goes
it's
into it. You
different.
don't really get that. It's just different. And so I was so drawn to that. But there was two things specifically that she had a bunch of stuff but there was two things specifically that people kept mentioning over and over again. And then I went on the website and she mentions these two things specifically together is like magic in a bottle. So the first thing, I don't even know what it is. It's some serum. It was like $88 for like a little thing. So, that was hard for me, but I was super
No,
excited for that. And then the second thing was a balm that you like rub on your face. So I figured
it
I'm gonna.
sounds like you said a bum that you rub on
Oh,
your face, and I was like, that's
well,
right up Sarah's alley.
okay. Wait a minute. I have a story about a time that I let a bum touch my face, but it was. I
I
know.
should have known. Why did I throw that bait out there? It wasn't
It
even
was
bait. It was
such a beautiful moment. Oh my god, I have to tell that story at some point. But I got the balm, and so I figured I'm gonna wash my face with that face wash that you told me about, and then I'm gonna put my serum in my balm. It was $150 on my face, and
yeah.
I'm just gonna really like really embody like this feeling of nurture as I take care of my skin, because I feel like I've really been needing some self nurturing. So,
Yeah. I love that.
speaking of self nurturing, are you gonna tell me about?
Okay. So here's the thing. When I first had my intake with Alina for the RTT session, and she was like, okay, where are you stuck? What do you want to work on? There were actually two things that I told her. And she's like, well, we only work on one thing at a time. And I'm like, but I'm an overachiever. And she's like, I know that, but we only work on one thing at a time. She was like holding this line. And I was like, but I feel like they're connected. And she's like, we only work on one thing at a time. And I'm like, fine, here's the thing we're going to work on. But in my
Stubborn.
mind, what's that?
Huh?
Stubborn, yes.
Oh, yeah.
But in my mind, I'm like, they're connected. I just feel like they are connected. So we did the intake, and there were two things that were coming up for me. And I feel like they're all coming up like as we get prepared to launch Self and hold this like really big space for 12 weeks. And I'm just being called to show up differently and recognize that like I've gone through periods in my life where my nervous system feels a little bit dysregulated, and having a very active, well, Smash.
Yeah.
He's chaos. He's a freaking tornado all the time. Um, and so that doesn't help. But I found myself showing up in ways for him that I was just adamant. Like I waited, Sarah, how old was I when my son was born? 38, I think. I waited so long. I waited so incredibly long to have kids because it was so important to me that my kids had a very different upbringing than I did. And it's not because I should have brought some tissues to where I'm sitting and I didn't. It's not because my parents did a bad job. It's just because there was a lot of times where I just felt like there wasn't room for, and it felt like I was a hindrance. It felt like I was, um, inconvenient. It was so hard because I was such an emotional, like sensitive, squishy kid. And so I waited and I waited and I'm like, I want to have my finances in order. I want to have my marriage in order. I want to have my house in order. I want to be like emotionally like ready for kids. And then, as you know, Asher is a 3-6 uh 3-6 emotional generator.
You poor thing.
He
A
has to
six in the first 30 years is basically a three. So he's like a 3-3. Like he's just all
he's a
three.
3-3 and you can't tell him anything. And obviously, my husband, like, he also like all alpha, like you can't like he's gonna do it himself. He's got to figure everything out. And he's just so much energy. And there's so many times where I have found myself like responding in a way that like from the outside people might not think anything of it, but from the inside it was as if I was responding to myself as a child and like hearing that same having heard that same response as a child. And it was just like breaking my heart because I'm like, this is exactly what I didn't want for my son. I did what I didn't want for any of my kids. I didn't want them to ever feel like their human experience was less important. My human experience. So I'm talking to Alina, and ironically enough, it was like this expression, this way that I found myself showing up where I was just kind of like condemning myself internally, like, why are you doing this? You said you were going to be different. You said you were going to break the pattern, right? But then on the flip side of that, I was like feeling like in the adult realm, like I wasn't like I'm not seen, like I'm an afterthought, which is just so ironic because I feel like that's the pattern as a kid, right? Like I was an afterthought. I was just like always in the background, like be seen but not heard, kind of stuff. And so anyway, we get into the RTT session, and she guides you through the into your subconscious to look at like when did these patterns set. And that morning, the thing that was coming up, like I just could not get it off my mind, off my heart, off my chest, was like our wedding reception it was a cluster. It was a lot, and it was a breakdown in the relationship with one of my parents. And on the surface, it would seem to other people like it was a one-time incident. But for me, it was just the very public the tip to the exclamation point of all of these other experiences that I had had with that parent over and over again that I just kind of like internalized and taken in upon myself, where it was like, this parent's emotions were so much more important than mine. Their experience was so much more important than mine. What they wanted was what I wanted was always subservient to that. What I needed was always beneath that. It was always subordinate. And so there was an incident, our wedding reception, like Chris and I, like we just didn't give any hacks. We knew 2 weeks into dating that we were going to get married. We knew. And we're like, ooh, we're going to have to give people some time to catch up. But we
They may be
knew.
shocked.
We knew. And so we wanted to go have an adventure and get married. That's what I always wanted. I just wanted to go off and I wanted to go have an adventure and have intimate moments with my partner. I didn't care about like, oh, we should have 200 people there. We should definitely have it catered, and we need to do this because this is trending. Like I didn't care
Yeah.
about any of that. So that's what we did. But then it was really important to my family that we have this like whole reception and travel all the way back, like literally across the country in order to facilitate this. So at any rate, hold on one second. I need to get a tissue because I know I'm there.
I'm blinding myself with this light. I want natural light, but it's like, let's see. A little natural light up in here.
Okay, so this parent is is very emotionally dysregulated and has been that way for many, 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 many years. Okay. Have you ever met somebody who like after the fact, especially an emotionally charged experience, like they can't remember what they said. They remember it differently than what happened, but to them it's real. And there's like all these emotions that are like supercharged around it. And then and if you challenge what they feel to be real, even though that's not the words that they said, that's not what happened, it just sends them. That's this person, this parent. And so without like rehashing all the details of our reception, there was a whole thing. And it resulted in me being very vulnerable and bringing my new husband and all of our kids across the country for this thing and being yelled and screamed at in front of all of these guests that I didn't, like that wasn't my core desire in the first place. And so it was like so much trauma. And I tried really hard to like resurrect that relationship after the fact. But the reality of it is like that was just the finality. Like everybody else getting to see it publicly, getting to see me humiliated on the day that it was supposed to feel like you're supposed to be the bride, it's supposed to be happy, it's supposed to like all the things, right? So that's where we started the RCT. And I'm just like, shit.
Aw.
So then
I just
we
want
get
to like
in.
point out like I've had this experience over and over again where when you're about to work on something, like it has to like the wound has to be ripped open for us to
Oh,
really be able
yes.
to get in there and to clean. And what
Yes.
I have seen happen with people is when they're on the brink of working on something and they have something like that pop up, a lot of times that is enough to scare them into stop move like to stop the progression, to stop looking at it,
Yeah.
right? The wound is ripped open and it's like, oh, I don't even want to deal with this right now. This is so much uglier than I thought it was. Let me just wrap this up, you know? So I just want to give you kudos for continuing to move forward with it.
So I feel like when there's something that needs this like deep healing, it's gonna hit you where you have no choice but to address it. And I'll be honest, like I care less about myself than I care about my son. I've been sitting with this for many years. I'm 41. Didn't matter enough to me to fix it until it was impacting my son. And I
Yeah.
would not stand for that. We thought it was that was I would did not want to have kids until I could make sure that I could protect them in the ways that I could feel like I was protected and care for them in the way that I wanted to be cared for. So we went backwards, and it's such an innocuous experience, but like we went to this wedding. It was like a friend of a family, and my dad was in the military, so we had like lots of military like uncles and aunties, right? And then I think it was like one of their kids. But I remember like it was just such a happy celebration. We had grown up with their kids, and like it was their wedding reception, no less. And so I just found it like really ironic that here that's showing up in the pattern again.
Mm-hmm.
And the music was playing and it was dance. And I remember being poked fun at,
How old are
being
you at
laughed.
this point?
Um, I would say I was probably like 8.
Okay. Okay. So this is young you. Okay.
So I'm being laughed at. I'm being ridiculed. And then they're calling other people to say, like, look at this, look at how she's dancing. I'm like 8 years old. Like, come on, and I'm white. Like I have rhythm in the first place. So anyway,
Sorry.
so and so I just was like shrinking. I just remember like finding a chair like off, like they receptions in the Midwest, they have like those long tables, right? Like where everybody was like seated almost like cafeteria style. And I just remember like sitting and like not moving the rest of the night and just being like, I don't want to get up, I don't want to move, I don't want to dance, I don't want to do anything that might cause attention or cause people to like make fun of me. These are people that this is like my family and other, people I would consider family. And so it was just like I was like such a sensitive, squishy kid. So she's like, okay, this is really good, but we're gonna keep going. And I'm like, great, cool, let's just rip it all out, right? So we go back. There was a period in time when I was 3 years old. And without getting into like all the details, my mom and dad got married when I was 2.5, 3 years old. And so we moved far away from like all of the people, my aunties and uncles and people that I knew. It was like 2.5 hours, but it felt much further because we had this whole like nuclear, like all the not nuclear, but all of these people who were always around and supportive, right? But then when we moved away, we didn't have that. So it was just my mom and my dad. And my dad adopted me shortly after all of this had happened, right? But I didn't know him super, super well. And again, like, you know, lots of emotional dysregulation, lots of baby self. And I remember my mom leaving. She was like, I'm leaving. I need to get out of here. And like I, I can see why she would need to do that, right? Like there were 2 kids, we were lived in a different place, like they were young, like but none of that really matters because in that moment I needed to go. I wanted to go with her. I really, really wanted to go with her. And she was so emotionally dysregulated, she just could not. She could not and would not. And I remember just like Like, you know, when Gabe cries and he's like so desperate, he just needs you and nothing else. I remember crying so desperately because I wasn't sure if she was gonna come back. And then I was like, and I don't have anybody yet. And I was like, I needed, and I just remember her like looking me off, like, like trash, like ick. And I was just like so freaking devastated because in that moment when I needed my human, they were not safe and they were not there for me. And in that moment when I needed to be seen, I was not by the person who I needed to be seen by the most. And that pattern has been like so consistent in my life. And so you can see how it repeated when I needed reassurance, when I needed safety, when I was like my most vulnerable and as an adult, and it played out on like a very public forum. And so that was my session with Alina, and like I'm very thankful to her. I'm really excited that we're gonna have her as like standby support for self because like, oh gosh, this work, man, it's just it's so intense. And I just like I'm so thankful because in the days after that afternoon, my dog, it was so sick that I had to take her to the emergency vet. And I'm like, I'm emotionally like so effing spent. I'm like, I'm toast. I have like nothing. I'm like nothing. And then I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so my body's digging for reserves because I had to rush her like across town to the emergency vet. And then, you know, manage everything while Chris was out of town. And so then like the next day, I was still very, very tired and like exhausted. But like that day and the days following, like it feels like my nervous system is more regulated than it has been in like so long. And I'm very thankful to be able to like sit in this work with Alina and sit in the work with self because like the presence that you get back by having a regulated nervous system, it has allowed me to be so present for my son, for my ex, my bonus kids, for to be able to like show up in the way that I wish my parents could have. So that was my RTE session. Obviously, there's a lot.
What was your homework?
Ugh.
I still haven't done the hardest piece of my homework. I sort of glazed over it. I also omitted my youngest memory from my story. So it gets sometimes it gets yucky.
Okay. I wrote it down. Hold on a second.
Of course you wrote it down.
Alina laughed at me too.
You
She
know what's
was
so
like,
funny?
you don't have to write this down. I'm like, I do have to write it down, or I would not
We didn't talk about, I think, my homework on the podcast that we did around mine, but it was so funny how I already knew all my homework. Like I had already.
when she said it, I knew. I was already like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do this. I'll probably avoid it a little bit longer. But then she told me that that's what I had to do. And I'm like, why? Why do I have to do that?
We're both very intuitive.
Anything else?
Maybe I should rephrase that. I was already doing the homework, which was
Yeah.
crazy. And because I was just listening to my sacral tell me what to do. Right. And
Yeah.
then she reaffirmed it, which for me was like, okay, awesome. I can count on my intuition. Great. I can lean on my 2 line. I know what to do. Awesome. I'm proud of myself that I was actually doing it instead of avoiding it. And it reassured me that Alina's working from her intuition as well, because the fact that she literally was like telling me the same exact things that had shown up for me, I was like, oh yeah, this is you can
She
always
is so funny because when she talks about like where it shows up in your body,
tell.
and it was like it felt almost like a sci-fi thing where it's like I feel like they had this metal thing that was like wrapped around and then like locked, like
Weird.
holding my jaw shut. I was like,
Ew.
but I actually feel it in another place as well. And what's interesting is I have been a grinder of my teeth
Mhm.
since I was very little, very,
Wow.
very, very little. And so literally the next morning after my session with her, the first time I woke up and my jaw wasn't like achy. It was like, 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 it was So I kind of like clenched it so hard all night, and any longer than I can possibly remember. But what she was really funny was in my belly, I was like, it feels like there's like this little gasket, and it just like throws like poison, like poisonous gas. And she kept describing it as a sprinkle. And I was like, oh, that's just the cutest word for it. It makes me feel like you were talking about words and how like words have meaning and carry meanings for us. And like where I'm feeling like it's just like poison gas, but not like gas like in your belly, but just like like a poisonous gas, like a green cloud. And she described it as like a little sprinkle. And I was like, well, now I can't be as mad at it because it's cute.
We can convert this into something a little bit naughty. Or we can call you a Squirtle. And
Oh my gosh, we're not even gonna go there. Uh, that's for another podcast. But so she was talking about it being a little sprinkle, and I was like, what's interesting, it didn't occur to me until like, days later after you're processing stuff. And I had issues with my gut even as a kid. Even as a kid, like when I was fudge brownies, 12 or 13. I remember having to go to the hospital and they make you like drink this barium and then they take x-rays like every 30 minutes. You drink some barium, they take an x-ray, 30 minutes later, you repeat, repeat, repeat. So they're like watching it go through your whole system because they couldn't figure out what was wrong. And ultimately, she's like, it shows up in the pattern. It's like your intuition is telling you, your gut is telling you. And you're recognized. Like I was able to point out very distinct times when like the words and action alignment of people like adults around me didn't make. As a kid, I was like, they're saying this, but I see this. That doesn't make sense. And so she's like, your gut is telling you what you need to know and do, and you weren't listening to it. So it makes perfect sense. Like as an adult now, knowing what I know, that's how it is. But my homework is I need to write a letter. I'm very excited about it.
is it to your
Uh,
parent?
yeah, it's to my parent.
That's the one
Uh,
I'm waiting.
there's two letters. There's the first letter that is like I forgive you. So it's like to the parent and to myself. And then there's the first part of the letter is actually the like all of the like crazy emotions that never get spoken, right? The like why you make me so angry and how I really feel about you. And then like obviously the forgiveness letter and then being able to burn them. And I'm like, it gave me pause because after this whole thing happened, like as an adult, we moved across the country and we lived, we bought a house. The house, we were supposed to live in a hotel for 3 weeks. The contract fell through. We ended up working and living in a residence in by Marriott for 6 weeks. It was chaos. But in the middle of all of that, I was like, I was I was trying to live and be by my higher self, not by my baby self, right?
Mhm.
And so I put so much thought and intention into like sitting in that hotel room and writing this letter, and it was multiple pages long, and it was like as emotion free as possible, right? Like I don't know how to not emotion free, but like the zingy emotions, right? Where like they're like provocative, like you come at somebody with this emotion and they're going to react. And
Mhm.
so I tried so hard to pull that out of it and just to have like a real conversation, like alpha communication. This is what I need. Here's what happened. Here's how I felt. Here's what I need. Here's where my boundary is at. Like very like laid it out all very like crystal clear. The issue is that because this parent wasn't honest with themselves or the people around them about what had actually happened that day, even the facts were triggering.
Mhm.
So I spent I like poured my heart and soul into like doing this whole exercise. And the difference between my homework with Alina and what had happened is like I sent it because the relationship was so fractured that it was like there couldn't be a phone conversation. There couldn't be an in-person communication because ultimately like I I had the trust had so thoroughly degraded that I didn't trust that we could have a conversation and that like the words that were being said, the words that were coming from them, the words that I was reacting to wouldn't get twisted after the fact. as they
Mm-hmm.
had so many times in the past. And I was like, if there's a written document, there's a communication that's sent. I have a record. They have a record. Like there's no miscommunication. This is what it is, and that like sent them so far over the edge that it was like another whole year. Well, guess what? In that whole year, I got pregnant with Asher, and I was like, here's what's crazy to me. This has nothing to do with the RTT session, but it does have to do with my work with Tracy. I knew from my work with Tracy that there were things that happened before I was born that I had recollection, which I shouldn't be able to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I shouldn't be able to remember things from before I was born. But it
Well, I
was
mean,
like,
most people would say that. Yeah.
well, but I know that you know what I mean. It was like there was feeling and
Yeah, yeah.
emotion that was swirling, and all the energy was like ah. And so I was like, that was part of why I waited to have kids because I was like, no, energetically, I need to be clean. Energetically, I need to be firm on my boundaries. Energetically, I need to protect my son who is swimming in whatever my energy is for the next year.
You know what's very interesting about this? So, you know about my infertility and how many miscarriages I have had. And when I learned to read the Akashic records and went in and was looking at that, Gabe,
Yeah,
who has tried to come to me before, had
yeah.
revealed to me, that the reason why I didn't come is because you and dad had stuff in your energy you need to clear up before I wanted to be born. And so it's so interesting because what you're talking about and what this idea that you wanted to make sure your energy was pure enough before your baby came down. It's like there's some truth to that because Gabe was experiencing that from the other end and was sharing
Mm.
with me, Mom, it wasn't that I didn't want you. It wasn't that there was something wrong with you. It wasn't that your body was failing you. It was literally, I need to make sure that I came at the right time to be in the right environment to become who I wanted to become, so
Yeah.
it's pretty selfless and beautiful of you.
Oh, now I have letters right. And I have had excellent communication with my smashy boy. In the last 2 weeks, it's almost like even with the 3-6, oh my gosh, I have to tell you, the perfect example. Yesterday, he got like one of those giant bubble sets in his Easter basket from the Easter Bunny, but like this kid doesn't do anything easy or gentle or so he's like got these things and they're on like 24-inch wands, right? And then there's like a big circle at the end, and he's like, he's like
You're like,
flinging bubble solution all over me and him and the duck,
it
and I'm
would
like,
work
I don't
better
want
if
to be
you just
covered in slime, but please. And then he dumped the solution like down the deck onto the concrete below it, and of course, like he lost his ever loving mind because there was no bubble solution left because he
yeah.
poured it all out. But I was like, it's okay. We're gonna go inside. We're gonna make some more bubble solution. We'll come back out later and it's gonna be great.
there,
And he,
there's such a lesson in there, like how many times we try and like, because kids will go faster thinking more bubbles will happen if I go faster. And it's like, we think if we apply force, if we just do more, if we just grind, maybe there will be more. But in doing that, you end up wasting and knocking things down, and the
oh
bubbles
my
can't come out
gosh.
and they're popping too fast. And then you get frustrated, and it's like, less is more, less is more, like
That does
gentle
not apply
child.
with him. It'll be a minute before he gets that. He went out there with KJ later on, and KJ ran into the same thing with them. And then at some point, they each had a wand. He hooked his over KJ's, and so he's yanking it. And KJ's like, "No, stop!" And I'm like, "You guys are both gonna pull the plastic apart. Nobody's gonna have a bubble wand, okay?"
Yeah.
Like, so it was interesting to watch them learn, like to be the observer of the lesson instead of like being in the mock-up lesson. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's I noticed after my session that the way that I was able to engage and play with Gabe changed
yeah,
so much. Um, I was preparing the slide deck for self earlier today, and it's so interesting how the slides that I was particularly focused on are things that you just brought up. So the first is, how we talk about how our baby self gets solidified by the things we experience when we're younger.
Yeah.
And when that happens, the central system that's controlling that baby self is the nervous system. It's the communication that's happening between the body and the brain. So, you know, all those years that we talk about in self, that gets solidified. And so what happens is, until we go back and we decondition and love these parts of us the way that we needed to, we will continue to live out these cycles even when we don't
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah.
Even when we don't want to. So you had said, I'm watching myself do this with Smash, and I'm going, I don't want to be doing these things. I don't want to be doing these things. And yet I'm doing the same things I did as a child. I'm emotionally reacting the same way that I did when I was a teenager. I'm thinking, you know, a lack of worth the same way that I did when I was a young adult. Like, all these things are coming up, and the bottom line is, we will continue to relive the experiences of our childhood over and over and over and
Yeah.
over again, until we realize that you can't ask the lower self to be in charge and expect a different result than what created that lowest and that baby self. You know, you have to be able to stand in the power of your adult self, in the power of your higher self. But we haven't been taught how to do that. And when we think of an older self, right, a higher self, a wiser self, where are our models? Our parents were struggling just like we're struggling. They were trapped in that same. Your parents are most likely operating from their baby selves.
100%. 100% still.
In
At 61 years old, still
Mhm.
operating as the baby self. And there's a part of me that's like, ah, that's so annoying. And then there's also this moment of the observer of like, I am so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry that you are still emotionally dysregulated and that you haven't felt compelled enough to do some of these things for yourself that would offer so much relief, not just for you, but would change the relationships all around you. Because
In
man,
who
that
is
baby self just triggers the baby self and everybody around them.
this
It's like the baby self has to be met with the baby self. There's no other alternative.
the same way that when you go in and you get uber emotional when you realize that your 3-year-old self didn't get what she needed. Like,
Yeah.
the moment that we can understand that the people who are hurting us are also those 3 old selves that didn't get what they needed. You know, we wouldn't get mad at a 3-year-old for mistreating us, but we'll get mad at a 50-year-old for mistreating us, not realizing that the 50-year-old is operating from a 3-year-old
Yeah.
mindset, because they are, or I should say, from a 3-year-old nervous system, right? Like, they're not able to show up for us the way that sometimes we can't show up for our kids, even when we desperately want to, even when we're watching ourselves being dumpster fucks of people and being like, why am I being this human right now? Like,
Yeah.
why can't I be better? So it's like it allows us to soften our hurts the more we do this work. It
Yeah.
allows us to stand in our power the more we do this work. It allows us to break these generational curses, and not from a space of, oh, I get to break this generational curse, how come you didn't? But from a space of, thank God it's finally time to stop, because who's going to benefit from this is everybody in
Yeah.
your lineage, your parents included, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just it's such a beautiful experience for us. I think the going back in these sessions and really relearning ourselves is an important step for many of us, because we have been performing for so long, we have been wearing masks for so long, that we don't remember what our 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 10-year-old, 14-year-old self was really needing in that moment. We forget. We use these defense mechanisms to shove it all away, or to laugh it away, or to deny that it even ever happened. And we forget. Think about, I was watching this reel the other day. It was a 2-year-old, right? And maybe Asher has done this, Gabe does this, where she was telling him that he needed to take a nap and he wanted to go to the park, and she said something like, you'll get to go to the park after you take a nap, like that'll be your reward once you nap. And so
Because
he
not
goes,
doing any of that.
okay. So he leaves his eyes open, as these kids do, and he goes, and he's watching his mom, not realizing that, hey, dummy, we know that you're not sleeping because your eyes aren't closed. But then he wakes up and he goes, okay, mommy, ready for a nap or whatever. And it just goes to show, like, at what age we start performing.
Yeah.
at what age we start doing the things that we think will get us what it is that we want to get.
Yeah.
And that performing is constantly reiterated. I'll give you a prime example. Have you ever, with your stepkids, because they're a little bit older, have you ever been out with them somewhere and somebody does something nice to them, and you or Chris turn to them and say, hey, say thank you? Have you ever done that? Or have you seen it done? You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, we're in the South and Chris was raised in the South. So yes. But also there's like, yes, ma'am, no, no, sir.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. No, so right. Okay. So when we tell our kids, hey, say thank you, or hey, write grandma a note that says thank you for my gift, or what do you say, to the Easter bunny, whatever. And what we're doing is we're saying, I need you to perform gratitude. I
Yeah.
need you to put on a mask right now, whether you feel gratitude or not. I need you to put on a mask that you're grateful, because as long as you do that, you're a good little boy or you're a good little girl. You've done what
Yeah.
you needed to do. You now deserve the gift that you get. And we're bypassing the actual embodiment of gratitude.
Yeah.
I can have the most ungrateful child who has the most amazing manners.
Yeah.
It's a difference between embodiment and performance. And so many of us have been performing for so long. We have no idea who we are underneath all of the performing. We have forgotten who we were before we started piling these masks on to keep us safe or to allow us to be
Yeah.
accepted in the environments that we are in. And so self allows us to go in there and start removing all of this so we can reconnect with this child in us. And sometimes we need help doing that because we're so far removed from the situation that we just can't even remember who we were. What's
Yeah.
so ironic about my experience with the memory that I had about the homeless guy and
Okay.
love and the things that came up for me around religion after my session? I found a notebook. What are the chances? I found a notebook that I had when I was 7 years old. It was a journal, and it was only 2 pages on this journal. And the first page of the journal was, if you had 3 wishes, the journal prompt was, if you had 3 wishes, what would you wish for? And I said, I wished nobody was homeless. I wished everybody accepted Jesus into their heart, and I wish everybody could go to heaven. That was the essence of who I was as this baby.
Crazy.
And like, of all the things I could have wished for, how many 7-year-olds are wishing for things like
Like a
that?
7-year-old.
7-year-olds are wishing for, toys and, you know, performance. The
Yeah.
performing 7-year-old is asking for toys. The performing 7-year-old is asking for the things that are going to make them accepted or cool. But the underlying essence of us, we're thinking about things that are far bigger. We don't give kids enough credit. They think about things like this. They think about love. They think about acceptance. They think about pain. They think about compassion. They think about abandonment. Like, these things are real things for kids, even though on the surface we're like, they're kids. Give them a toy, give them something to eat, shove them in front of the TV, they'll be fine. And not realizing that, no, these are little beings, and they have feelings, and they have thoughts, and they have trauma and wounds. And we just, unfortunately, it's like, as long as they're not behaving them out, as long as those things are not being expressed, we just chalk it up as, my kid's well behaved, it's fine, and
You
not
know what's
really taking the
crazy
time.
is as a little kid, I was like so well behaved, so good in school. I did all the things I was supposed to do. But also, in that pile of stuff your parents kept that you just have drawings and school
Mhm.
projects and stuff, there were multiple times when I found cards or letters that were written to my mom. That's
Mhm.
it in the like you can barely write the letter and the letters are big, small, right? Like
Mhm.
I'm like, I don't even know how old I would have been when I wrote that, but I obviously like wasn't that big
Itty bitty, yeah.
and writing, thank you for not aborting me. Thank you for keeping me.
Yeah, because you were hearing that. You were hearing, I'm a great mom because I kept you when I could have aborted you. Like,
It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, how could you, like, I can't imagine. I,
I know.
It sends me like the thought of my son ever feeling like that or hearing that or like having any inclination that he wasn't wanted or that he was an inconvenience, it like sends me through the roof. And I'm just like, I feel so, I get so protective over little Darce.
Hmm.
Like, I just want to hug her and hold her and just tell her like, you're gonna grow up to be such a, you're gonna care so deeply about people. You're gonna love your kids so hard and they're gonna love you so hard. There are going to be so many people in the world who need that love, and you're going to give them the love that they didn't have. And this is hard shit, I know.
Hmm.
But you're going to carry it forward to a lot of people. It's going to be really beautiful.
Yeah. We we can't do life without contrast. You know, like if you did not have those experiences in your life, if I didn't have the experiences that I had in my life, like this wouldn't feel the way that it feels right now. Like this, it wouldn't be as impactful. It wouldn't be as, the way that you love Asher wouldn't be so important to you
Yeah.
had you not been trying to create a contrast from what you experienced as a child. Right. And so there's like people get to this really pivotal point when they start doing this work, this inner child work, because it's so easy for us to become victims of our childhood, for us to
Oh, yeah.
say,
I can
man,
totally see
this
that.
now, like we all have done it or do it where we're like, oh man, now that I remember what happened to me. I can't, how could you say that to somebody? How could you? I could never imagine saying that to my kid. And instead of going, wow, I could never imagine saying that to my kid. Like
Yeah.
that, there is something beautiful in that. Instead, we can get so caught up on how could you do that, right? And it's so I found myself playing both sides of that coin when I do internal work. Sometimes I leave a session, I'm so angry at my parents. I'm so mad at that person who hurt me, and then it's like we learn about this in what is the gate of the fighter? I think it's 38. We learn about this in human design. It's the energy of the fight in low vibration is fighting the person. But in high
Oh,
vibration, it's fighting for the cause. It's you going, instead of taking that fight to my mom's door, I'm going to take that fight into every moment where it's easier for me to lash out at Asher than it is for me to comfort and love him. But I'm going to fight against that baby self. I'm going to fight against that trauma. I'm going to fight against that inclination, that physical reflex. I'm going to fight against that, and I'm going to stand for what I truly want, which is something different with my kids, right? And
yeah.
it's so important that we continually get ourselves back to, after we release all this stuff and love on ourselves, to get back to the space of this is really about love. How can you transmute all this shit into love? Turn back and love yourself. You don't have to critique what your 7-year-old, 14-year-old, 21-year-old was doing or thinking or feeling. You get to just turn around and love them the way that we needed to be loved. And you get to do that every single day. And as you do that, your higher self gets to come in and start running the show because
Oh, so
she's
awesome.
not,
I love when she
not
shows up.
taking care
I'm
of a
like, woo, thank
baby.
you. So glad you're here.
I need a break.
I need a hug. I need a break.
So
Yeah.
beautiful. I'm
I
really
love that. It's like the meme that's like probably needed a hug, but I did something else. I did X
cut
instead.
my hair
Probably
instead.
probably needed a hug, but called my higher self instead.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man. This work is
Ah,
great.
we got a lot of work to do. I'm excited for the next week. A lot happening this week.
I ordered some stuff to make the custom workbooks and gifts for
Our participants.
students who enrolled,
Cool.
initial students. I'm really excited about it. My crafty side just wants to like come alive and
Of course.
put a little, like we were talking about with the beeswax lady, put a little love and energy into it, so people can feel that we're with them on this journey. I mean, this isn't a, hey, we've mastered this, so let's teach you this. It's, hey, we're experiencing this, and learning this information, having this knowledge is really helping give us a pathway on how we can, use this inner child work to get us to what we desire and where we want to be, instead of using inner child work to validate where we currently are to stay. You know what I mean? It's the things that we get to do inside of this self program by leading people through this process in a way that leaves them feeling more empowered at the end of it, instead of now I've uncovered all this shit, now what? Like,
I'll be
I'm
honest,
excited
Sarah,
about
like I don't know what this round of self is gonna hold, but I cannot shake this feeling that whatever it is absolutely huge. Because you and I, my capacity, your capacity has been getting stretched in preparation for this round of
so
self
big.
for months. And I'm like,
It's,
holy heck, what are these
it's
participants gonna
so
have? Like, what are they gonna be doing?
every day I have something else that lands
Yeah.
inside of this self container, some another thing to offer, to help, or to support people walking through this journey, another aha moment, another perspective that's going to maybe help somebody who's not walking a path similar to ours, but maybe looks a little bit different. It's like there's so much that keeps landing, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's funny because when we did the self glimpse, somebody had made a comment like, this is like college level material. I feel like I'm in a college course.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm
I've
like,
heard this that or similar multiple times. So they're like, hold on, I need to go back and watch it again because there's so many nuggets in there. And I was watching, but I took notes, but I needed to take more notes, and they're like reviewing it multiple times
it's
over.
been it's been watched like 1,400 times. Did you see that?
Oh, I haven't looked recently, but the last time I looked at it was at it was over 1100. So now I can't.
Crazy.
That's crazy.
But it's like the if they felt that way with that glimpse, man, I can't even wait, because the amount of stuff that has downloaded since that glimpse. I mean, I've already changed the slide deck that was shown in that preview. Like, there's already been changes and upgrades to it, and I'm just so excited. I literally, I cannot wait for this work. I just looked at the clock and it was 12:22. I cannot wait to dive into this work. The people that are already enrolled in this class, I'm so excited to work with this particular group. um it's
Did
just
you
gonna,
check the count on that before we got in?
what,
Did you check the count on part one of self before we got in?
I think it
Before we
was
hopped on this call?
I think it was like last night. Why?
Oh, because I was like, wow, that's crazy. And now I'm like, now I'm curious. It's over 1500 now. 50,
Oh, well.
here, this is like such a gift to be part of work that 1500 people were impacted in a way that they can start to crack open some of these patterns that haven't been serving them for how long. And like,
Mhm.
the ripple effects. Like I was talking months ago, like I just feel like I'm so excited and honored to work with so many powerhouse women and to see and experience the ripples that those women go out and create like in the wild. Because, and not to say that men
The
are
what?
less than or different or whatever, but women are built different, obviously, right? And I'm like, 1500 people have watched that. The majority, I'm assuming, are women. And what did those 1500 women take to their kids, to their spouses, to their families that's different now? And what, like, and then you get into the participants where you're going like even deeper, the ripples that causes. I'm just like,
Mhm.
yeah, way. I'm
I,
so excited.
I have a client that was in my DMs yesterday, and we were talking about how she's just not in a place right now to take the full self program, but she
Yeah,
watched preview one.
yeah,
And I re-went through that slide deck, and I ended up splitting lesson one up over
yeah.
the next three lessons,
It's a
because
lot.
it
There's so
was
much.
so much in there. And I'm like, girlfriend, just watching that and starting there and starting to do some of this work, it, like, you have access to stuff that, and I believe in remembrance. I believe that once people start dipping their toes in this stuff, it's
Yeah.
like things just start unlocking inside of you. And so what feels really great to me is knowing that there was value in that 1,500 watches. They weren't watching a sales call where it was
Uh-uh.
just us trying to sell them on it. They were literally hearing things and getting nuggets that if they implemented in their life right now, if they just start to uncover some of that right now and meet themselves where they're at. If you can't take self right now, you can't meet yourself where you're at. But
Yeah.
just by meeting themselves, they're benefiting so much from this. I literally just, God, I know it's gonna be so huge. It's gonna be
We're
amazing.
T minus 6 days at this point. Did I tell you I will be live in living color for part one of self? Yeah.
Wait, is it in 6 days? It's in 6 days?
As the official timekeeper of this duo, Sarah, 6 days, man. 6 days. Are you ready? Because it's less than a week. Where's my balloons?
Even imagine stuff has been downloading every single day. I can't even imagine what another 6 days of stuff is gonna look like for
I
me.
know.
Do you see now why it's so hard for me to pre-plan with like workbooks and stuff before I go into class? Because it's like it's like I take the process, like I'm going through the process while the class is like birthing. It's like me going through the process is curating the class. It's all in live, it's all
Yeah.
happening live. And so it's, oh God, I'm really excited for this. I think it's going to be fabulous.
Well, I have added in lots of additional contemplation space in each section that we go through. So as things evolve and land differently, and I know that our live group gets a little bit juicier experience than when the course goes evergreen.
I
Um,
actually love that we're doing that we have very specific things that we are doing different for the live group to create a more intimate experience um, than just being copy and paste for the evergreen,
yeah,
because I do feel like this work is very individual and very unique. And sometimes when we're not in the container and then we try and witness the container after the fact and
not
all
the
of
same.
it's just not the same. And in some ways it almost steals some of the magic from you just experiencing a new container,
Yeah,
of your own. So I'm excited for all of this.
me too. I worked through this afternoon. I'm gonna go keep cranking out the rest of this workbook. I've got a couple more sections I'm gonna work on, so I'm sure I'll talk to you later today.
Okay, I love you.
I love you, I mean it. Bye.
Bye.